My name is Danielle Carter. I'm 26 years old. On Christmas Eve, I collapsed at my family's dinner table. Holiday lights sparkled. Roast turkey filled the air with cinnamon. Everyone was laughing until I gasped that I couldn't breathe. "Stop pretending," my mother hissed across the silverware. "Here we go again." Tiffany rolled her eyes, glass in hand. My chest locked. Words vanished. The room spun to white. I hit the floor. Plates shattered. Someone screamed for help. And yet they still accused me of faking it. But that night was only the beginning. When I was 6, my father died in a car accident. What I remember isn't the crash, only the warmth of his laugh. He'd lift me onto his shoulders, safe above the world. After he was gone, our house grew silent, then rigid. Mom, Michelle, ruled it like her boutique. Polished outside, merciless within. Appearances mattered more than feelings. If I cried, I embarrassed her. If I was sick, I exaggerated. At 9, I fell from monkey bars and heard the snap. My wrist swelled purple, throbbing with every breath. In the car, I whispered, "It really hurts, Mom. I think it's broken." She didn't glance at me. "Stop the theatrics. You wouldn't cry this much." At home, she handed me the vacuum. Guests were coming, so I vacuumed, tears streaming, cradling my arm against my chest. Tiffany, 2 years older, stood smirking in the doorway. "Drama queen," she sang, rolling it like candy on her tongue. Only after the guests left did Mom drive me to urgent care. The doctor's x-ray confirmed the fracture, a clean break. He asked gently, "How long has it been like this?" Mom cut in smoothly. "Just an hour ago. She's sensitive." The lie cemented itself between us. The doctor nodded, scribbled, and my truth vanished. From then on, Tiffany echoed Mom's tone like scripture. If I had the flu, "Danielle's dying again." If I twisted my ankle, "Want me to call the paramedics?" Their laughter was the chorus of my childhood. Mom never corrected it. She tightened rules instead. Don't cry, don't complain, don't make a scene. So I stopped speaking my pain aloud. At school, I learned to smile through dizziness. At home, weakness became ammunition. I shrank, convinced maybe they were right. Maybe my body was a liar. But at night, under blankets, I whispered to myself, "You're not pretending. You're real. You know your body." It was the only space I believed my own truth. By high school, I had mastered silence. If migraines blurred my vision, I locked the door until they passed. If dizziness struck, I pushed harder in gym until it faded. Tiffany tattle sang, "Danielle's sick again." Mom laughed with her. Every day, I counted down to graduation. Freedom meant escape from the attic of denial. When I finally left for college, it felt like sunlight. But escaping didn't erase the old script. Because even in new places, the voice of doubt still followed. College in Dallas felt like sunlight after years locked in an attic. My roommate Hannah noticed instantly. The wince on stairs, the migraines in dark corners. One night she found me curled on the dorm floor, clutching my stomach. "Oh my God, Danielle, are you okay?" she gasped. "I'll be fine," I whispered, bracing for ridicule. Instead, she shook her head. "You're pale. We're going to the clinic." The words stunned me. "We're going. Not stop pretending." Tests confirmed a stomach ulcer. Stress carved inside me. I wasn't faking. I wasn't dramatic. I was sick. That night, Hannah brewed ginger tea and said, "Your pain is real." Her words cracked something open, a truth I had buried. With her, I began to believe it. College became repair in small steps. I studied business, worked cafe shifts, joined a photography club. For the first time, friends noticed when I wasn't okay. When migraines hit, they brought water, not laughter. But ghosts followed. Trips home to Orlando reopened the wound. Mom eyed me critically. "You've gained weight again," Tiffany scoffed. "So dramatic, you probably fainted on purpose." I laughed it off, but doubt crawled back at night. If my family never believed me, maybe my friends were just kind. Still, I clung to the fragile truth. Not everyone dismissed me. By graduation, I carried a shaky sense of worth. I landed a marketing job in Miami, moved into a small apartment. Hannah came too, and for the first time, life felt steady. But stability vanished overnight. At 25, the company downsized. My job disappeared in one meeting. Savings drained with rent and groceries. Independence collapsed. By October, I had no choice but to drive back. Back to Orlando. Back to them. The house looked the same, but stepping in felt suffocating. Mom's air kiss carried judgment. "Don't tell me you're moving in." Tiffany's heels clicked, smile sweet as poison. "Of course it's temporary," she purred. "Danielle's always a guest star here." I bit my tongue. I needed a roof, time, space. Within a week, Mom tethered me with chores. "You'll take charge of Christmas. Guests expect everything perfect." Tiffany dodged responsibility, leaving the burden on me. So December became errands, decorations, endless lists. I worked until my back screamed, chest tightened, breath grew shallow. "Mom, I don't feel right," I said once. She didn't look up. "Of course you don't. You never do." So I kept going. Shopping, wrapping, cleaning. Each jab from Tiffany cut deeper. "These ribbons are crooked. Dessert looks sad." At night, Hannah's voice echoed, "Your pain is real." But in that house, her truth melted away. And on Christmas Eve, my body finally betrayed me in front of them all. Christmas Eve arrived polished to perfection. Candles glowed, silverware gleamed, carols hummed from hidden speakers. I looked like a ghost in the mirror, lips cracked, breath shallow. But I powdered my face, slipped into a red dress, and forced a smile. The table was flawless, guests praising Tiffany's efforts as if she had lifted a finger. I sat in the corner, chest tight, vision blurring, laughter buzzing like static. Every breath burned, every swallow felt like glass. When I finally gasped, "I can't breathe," Mom hissed. "Stop pretending." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Here we go again, always stealing the spotlight." I tried to answer, but the room tilted sideways. I pushed back my chair, legs folding beneath me. Plates crashed, glasses shattered. I hit the tile hard, gasping. Mom's heels clicked toward me, arms crossed. "Get up, this is ridiculous." Tiffany's laugh was sharp. "Couldn't wait to pull this stunt, could you?" Their voices blurred, fading. My chest locked, my lips turned cold. Then Justin, my brother-in-law, dropped beside me, face pale. "She's not pretending, she's blue. Call 911. "Don't encourage her," Mom snapped. "She's done this before." But Justin ignored her, phone already to his ear. "She's not breathing. Send an ambulance now." The last thing I saw was the paramedics bursting through the door. "Critical patient. Get the stretcher." And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, the world was sterile white. Beeping machines, oxygen tube, my chest raw but working. A nurse hurried over. "Don't try to sit up. You stopped breathing on arrival. We stabilized you." Stopped breathing. The words fell like stones. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't exaggerating. Something real had almost killed me. Then the door burst open. Mom swept in, Tiffany close behind. Their faces weren't relief. They looked annoyed. "Do you know what you've put us through?" Mom sighed. I blinked, throat raw. I couldn't breathe. "You embarrassed us," Tiffany snapped. Guests whispered all night. Christmas was ruined. The nurse stiffened. "She suffered a severe asthma attack, possibly pneumonia. This wasn't for attention. She nearly died." Mom's lips tightened. "She always makes things bigger than they are. How soon can she be discharged? We have brunch tomorrow." The air left me all over again. Even with proof, even after almost dying, they still didn't believe me. When the nurse left, Tiffany leaned close, voice sugar-coated and sharp. "Next time, try not to ruin the holiday. Some of us actually matter." Justin appeared in the doorway, eyes guilty, voice low. "Danielle, don't listen. I saw you. You weren't faking." For a moment, I clung to his words like a lifeline. But Mom snapped, "That's enough. Don't encourage her." The door clicked shut, silence pressing down harder than the machines. Staring at the ceiling tiles, I realized the truth at last. Their disbelief wasn't just cruel. It was dangerous. If I kept living by their denial, one day I wouldn't wake up at all. And that realization lit the fire I would carry into the fight. 2 days later, they discharged me. Not Mom, not Tiffany. Justin drove me from the hospital, jaw tight, hands gripping the wheel. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine. Christmas still staged like nothing happened. Mom flipped through a magazine at the table. Tiffany scrolled her phone. Neither looked up when I walked in. I cleared my throat. "The doctor said I need rest. No more heavy chores." Mom turned a page. "Then maybe don't dramatize everything. You're fine." Heat rose in my chest. Not sickness this time, but fury. For 25 years, I had swallowed their disbelief. I had bent myself smaller, prayed for scraps of kindness. But lying in that hospital bed, I realized something. Surviving them was killing me. I pulled the hospital bracelet from my pocket and set it on the table. The plastic tag gleamed under the light. My name stamped in black ink. "This says otherwise," I said. I stopped breathing. "That's not drama. That's real." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Here we go again, always the victim." "No," I said, my voice steady. "Not anymore." Mom finally looked up, irritation flashing. "Don't be ridiculous. Family is family. You can't just walk away." I met her gaze, calm and colder than I'd ever felt. "Watch me." Silence thickened. Tiffany scoffed. Justin shifted, eyes flickering with something like respect. That night, I packed quietly. No screaming, no door slamming. Just folded clothes, zipped bags, and a heart bruised but resolute. Before dawn, I wheeled my suitcase out. The cold air hit sharp and clean, as if the world itself exhaled with me. I didn't know exactly where I was going, Hannah's couch, maybe Miami again. But I knew where I wasn't staying. For the first time, leaving didn't feel like running away. It felt like survival. Hannah opened her apartment door with wide eyes and outstretched arms. "You look like hell," she whispered, pulling me into a hug so tight I shook. For the first time in weeks, I let myself sob. Not the quiet tears I'd mastered, but heavy cries that racked my chest. Hannah didn't flinch. She held me until the storm passed. Recovery was slow. My lungs needed time, and so did my heart. But every day outside that house felt like proof I'd made the right choice. Therapy came next, painful, raw, necessary. I learned to say, "My pain matters," without waiting for permission. Piece by piece, I stitched myself back together. Justin texted sometimes. Apologies he couldn't say aloud. I read them, unsure if forgiveness would ever come, but grateful for the fact that at least one person had seen the truth. I started freelancing again. Small jobs, tutoring, marketing projects. Each paycheck, no matter how tiny, felt like a victory. Independence returning, step by shaky step. And with each step, I moved closer to the life I was meant to claim. The months after leaving blurred with court dates, therapy, and long nights rebuilding. But slowly, the dust settled. My lungs healed. My voice grew stronger. By the next Christmas, I didn't return to Orlando. Instead, Hannah and I cooked clumsy dinners in her apartment. We burned cookies, drank cheap wine, and laughed until the smoke alarm screamed. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. Looking around that table, friends sharing stories, Hannah grinning wide, Justin calling in over video chat from another city, I felt something I had never felt at home. Belonging. For years I thought survival meant enduring my family, shrinking myself to fit their version of me. But true survival meant stepping away, choosing spaces where my breath came easy, where my truth wasn't a burden but a bond. 5 years later, December still stings with ghosts. Twinkling lights and cinnamon smells stir memories. But I don't run anymore. This year, I walked the beach on Christmas morning. The ocean stretched endless, waves folding and unfolding like pages. Behind me waited a home I built myself. Sunlit, fragile, imperfect, but mine. Books stacked, plants thriving, laughter filling the air. Hannah still teased me like a sister. Justin visited when he could, quieter now, gentler. And slowly, I let others in too. Mom and Tiffany? Silence. Years without a word. Sometimes it aches, that absence. But silence is kinder than their denial ever was. Family isn't something fixed. It can be chosen. When I left that house, I thought I was walking away from everything. Now I know I was walking toward myself. This life, fragile and unfinished as it is, finally feels like mine. That's my story. I spent years begging for love in a house that only gave me doubt. I almost lost my life before realizing I didn't need their belief to make my pain real. What I needed was to believe myself. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or been told your feelings don't matter, I hope my journey shows you this. You can step away. You can rebuild. You can choose a family that chooses you back. Have you ever faced something like this? Tell me in the comments. And if this story touched you, please subscribe for more. Because sometimes telling it out loud is the first step to healing.
Some mornings, I still catch myself looking around my apartment like I'm seeing it for the first time. The high ceilings, the sunlight spilling through the east-facing windows, the faint smell of cedar from the work samples I bring home from the shop. It's not extravagant, but every square foot is mine, paid for by years of 4 a.m. starts, late nights in the workshop, and weekends spent building a client base one piece of furniture at a time. Chicago can feel relentless if you don't have a place that feels like a fortress. Mine does. My apartment is quiet, safe, and exactly how I want it. No husband to compromise with, no in-laws dropping in uninvited, no one rearranging my kitchen drawers, just me, my tools, and the satisfaction of knowing I got here without leaning on anyone. A few blocks away is my rental condo. Derek and Felicity Moore moved in 3 years ago and have been the kind of tenants landlords dream about. Rent's on time every month. They shovel their own walk in the winter. And last Christmas they dropped off a tin of cookies just to say thanks. I've never had a single reason to worry about them. It's strange, thinking how I became this independent. When we were kids, my brother Corbin was the center of my parents' world, the golden boy, the one who got new bikes every year, the one they bragged about at family barbecues. the one they bailed out whenever his big opportunities collapsed. I was the self-sufficient child, the one who didn't need anything because I learned early that asking didn't change much. That lesson became a habit, and the habit became a way of life. College on scholarships, business built from scratch, credit score spotless because no one else was going to save me if I stumbled. It's not that I resent it not anymore. It's just the way it's always been. By now, I'd made peace with it. Corbin could have the attention. I had stability. Our paths only crossed at obligatory holidays, and that was fine by me. My parents had their favorite, and I had my life, untouched by their constant rescues and endless dramas. Or at least, that's what I thought. Right up until the phone call that made me realize my quiet, carefully built life was about to be tested. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my phone lit up with my mother's name. Lorraine never called in the middle of the day unless it was important, so I set aside my sanding block and answered. "Cambria," she began, her voice bright. "Your father and I have the most exciting news. We sold the Evanston house." I blinked. "You sold the house? After 30 years? Yes, and you won't believe it. We got $480,000. Isn't that wonderful?" I was halfway through telling her it was a smart move when she steamrolled right over me. "We gave it all to Corbin. It's his wedding gift. He found a beautiful penthouse downtown, and this will be the perfect start to his new life with Sloan." The words hung there for a second, my brain trying to process the math. "You gave him all of it." "Of course," she said lightly, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "And since we won't be living in Evanston anymore, we'll be moving into your rental. You can let Derek and Felicity know they'll need to move out by the end of next month." It wasn't a question. It was an announcement. "No," I said. Flat. "I'm not evicting my tenants. They've done nothing wrong, and they have a legal lease. I can help you find a place." Her voice tightened. "Cambria, we're your parents. This is what family does for each other." Before I could reply, my father's voice came on the line, deep and sharp. "We raised you. We didn't think we'd have to remind you what you owe us." I stared out the workshop window, the quiet hum of the city suddenly distant. "I don't owe you my livelihood," I said. "And this conversation is over." I hung up, knowing full well it wouldn't be the last I'd hear about it. That evening, I met Rachel for coffee at the corner cafe near the shop. She listened quietly as I laid out the call with my parents, her mouth tightening in that way it does when she's holding back judgment. "They're not going to let this go," she said finally. "If they've already decided they're entitled to your rental, the first no is just the warm-up." I tried to brush it off, but her words lodged somewhere deep. Rachel had known me since college. She'd seen how my parents operated, how quickly they could turn a polite request into relentless pressure. 3 days later, my phone rang again. Lorraine's name, I almost didn't pick up, but I told myself it would be better to hear her out once than avoid her forever. "Cambria," she began, her tone soft and almost pleading. "I've been thinking about our situation. Your father and I are getting older. We won't always be able to take care of ourselves. Isn't it a blessing for everyone if we're in a place you already own? You could keep an eye on us. Make sure we're safe." I let the silence stretch, but she pressed on. "It's not like Derek and Felicity have been there forever. Tenants come and go. You could just tell them it's time to go. It's business, nothing personal." For half a second, I felt the tug of the easy route end the lease. Avoid the fight, keep the family peace. But then I pictured Derek and Felicity hauling boxes down the sidewalk in the middle of winter, losing their home because my parents couldn't face the consequences of their own choices. "I'm not evicting them," I said firmly. "If you need help finding somewhere else, I'll help, but the condo isn't an option." Her sigh was heavy and theatrical. "I thought you'd understand what family means." When the call ended, I set my phone face down on the workbench, knowing this was only the start of something bigger. It was just past noon when my phone lit up with Derek's name. I answered, expecting a question about the parking garage or a maintenance issue. His voice was tight, urgent. "Cambria, you need to get over here." There are two older people at the door with suitcases saying they own the condo. They're pounding on the door, yelling for us to leave. My stomach dropped. Do not open the door. I'm on my way. I grabbed my keys, barely locking up the workshop before running to the car. The drive felt twice as long, every red light a personal insult. I kept telling myself maybe it was a misunderstanding, maybe they were confused, but deep down, I already knew. When I pulled up, there they were, Lorraine and Graham standing on the small front porch, two oversized suitcases beside them, shopping bags slung over their shoulders like they'd just arrived from a vacation. My mother was pounding on the door with the side of her fist, her voice carrying down the block. Graham stood beside her, posture stiff, jaw set, like a landlord ready to collect overdue rent. Mom, Dad. What is this? Lorraine's face lit up like she'd been waiting for me to arrive. Thank goodness you're here. These people won't let us in. Tell them they have to leave. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. You don't live here. Derek and Felicity are my tenants. They have a legal lease. You need to leave. Graham stepped forward, his tone sharp. We've been at an extended stay for 2 weeks waiting for you to do the right thing. Our checkout is today. We're moving in. That's not happening, I said. You sold your house, gave away the money, and that was your choice. This is my property. And you're trespassing. Lorraine's voice rose, loud enough for neighbors to peek out their windows. We sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay us. I didn't flinch if you don't leave. I'll call the police. For a moment, no one moved. Then Graham yanked up a suitcase handle, muttering under his breath as they both stormed past me toward their car. I stood there watching them drive away, knowing this was far from the end of it. The morning after the porch incident, my phone started buzzing before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee. At first, I thought it was work, maybe a supplier with an early delivery, but one glance at the screen told me otherwise. Aunt June, Uncle Philip, Cousin Marissa, names I hadn't seen in my call log in years. I let the first few go to voicemail, but then the texts started rolling in. How could you do this to your own parents? They're homeless and you have space. Family comes first. Cambria. By the time I reached the shop, my phone was a constant hum in my pocket. None of them asked what happened. Not one. They'd clearly heard a single version of events and decided I was the villain. Around mid-morning, my cousin Blake left a voicemail that was a full 3 minutes of guilt-tripping about respect for elders and how your parents worked so hard for you. He didn't mention that they'd just handed $480,000 to Corbin or that they'd tried to bully me into breaking a legal lease. By noon, I'd had enough. I closed the workshop for the afternoon, sat at my desk, and opened my laptop. If they were going to paint me as the ungrateful daughter, they were going to do it with the truth in front of them. The email took 2 hours to write. I started with the timeline sale of the Evanston house, the full amount given to Corbin, the uninvited move-in announcement. I included screenshots of my parents' texts, a scanned copy of Derek and Felicity's lease, even property records showing when I bought the condo and in whose name it was held. The last paragraph was the most satisfying. I listed every relative who had called or texted and wrote, "Since you are all so concerned about my parents' housing, I'm sure one of you will be happy to provide them with a place to stay. Please reply with your move-in date so I can give them your address." I hit send to 30 people and closed my laptop. The silence came almost instantly. The group chat that had been pinging all morning went dead. By the next day, half the callers had vanished, the rest offering vague excuses about not having the space. Not one volunteered to take them in. The quiet was nice, but I knew it was temporary. People like my parents didn't just let go, they regrouped. It was Rachel who brought me the first hint of news. We were having lunch at a small bistro near the shop when she leaned across the table. "You didn't hear this from me," she said, lowering her voice. "But Corbin's penthouse deal is falling apart." I raised an eyebrow. "Already?" She nodded. "The bank's asking for income verification, tax returns, proof of steady work. You know basic stuff. Apparently, he doesn't have anything to show them." A slow, unsurprised wave settled over me. and the deposit gone. She said, "Your parents' money is sitting with the seller, non-refundable." I stirred my iced tea, thinking about how quickly $500,000 had evaporated. No one was going to get that back. 2 weeks later, another piece of gossip floated in this time from a mutual acquaintance of Sloane's, their lavish downtown wedding. The one she'd been boasting about on social media for months was officially off the books. The venue had canceled because payment hadn't been made by the deadline. No payment, no ballroom, no open bar. The new plan was a ceremony in Sloane's parents' backyard. I didn't bother picturing the scene. I could already hear the whispered judgments from guests who'd been promised champagne fountains and skyline views, while their perfect image crumbled. I kept my focus on something tangible. A small commercial space a few blocks from my current workshop had been on my radar for months. The owner was eager to sell, and after some quiet negotiations, I signed the papers and got the keys. The expansion would give me more room for larger commissions and storage growth I'd earned without anyone's handouts or manipulations. I didn't post about it. I didn't announce it to the family. This was mine. Built and paid for with my own work. If Corbin and my parents wanted to live in the chaos they'd created, that was their choice. But the thing about desperation is that it doesn't fade when the money runs out. It sharpens. And I had a feeling that the next move, whatever it was, would land right back on my doorstep. 8 months passed without a word from my parents. No calls, no texts, no sudden appearances. I began to think maybe they had finally accepted the boundary I'd drawn. That illusion ended on a Saturday morning. I was sipping coffee at my kitchen table when the Ring doorbell chimed. On my phone screen, Lorraine stood on the porch holding a bouquet of lilies, Graham beside her with a grocery bag. Both were dressed like they were attending a church luncheon. "Cambria," my mother called, her voice overly sweet. "We brought groceries to make you that roast you used to love," Graham added. "We've been thinking a lot about what happened. We want to talk, make things right." I didn't move from my chair. 8 months of silence hadn't erased the memory of them pounding on my tenant's door or rallying relatives against me. Props and polite tones didn't change what they'd done. For 10 minutes. They took turns speaking to the camera, alternating between contrition and gentle guilt. When it became clear I wasn't coming to the door, Lorraine's voice wavered. "Cambria, don't be childish. Let us in so we can talk face to face." I dialed the non-emergency police line. When the officer arrived, I explained the history, including the prior trespass at the rental property. He turned to my parents and said, "She's asked you not to come here. That needs to be respected." Lorraine clutched the flowers tighter, tears welling up. Graham muttered about family loyalty as they walked back to their car. The officer handed me his card. "If this happens again, consider filing for a restraining order. You've got a solid case. By Monday afternoon." The paperwork was in motion. A week later, a judge granted the order 200 yards between us at all times. No calls, no visits. It was the first real breath of relief I'd taken in months. But I knew people who ignored boundaries rarely stopped at the first line drawn. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon while I was sanding a custom dining table. The number was local but unfamiliar. "Is this Cambria Ellsworth?" a man asked. "I'm calling about the investment opportunity your brother mentioned last month." I set down the sander. "My brother, yes, Corbin. He said you two run a real estate business together. He showed me photos of your properties and said you were looking for private investors." A cold, electric wave moved through me. What exactly did he tell you over the next few minutes? The man David explained that Corbin had approached him at a networking event, claiming they were partners in a profitable property portfolio. He'd shown photos of my apartment, the rental condo, even the new workshop space, framing them as shared assets. David had already handed over $5,000 as a good faith deposit toward a larger investment. David. "I don't have a business partner," I said. "Corbin doesn't own any part of my properties. He lied to you." There was a long pause. "So, I've been scammed." "Yes," I said. "And you're not the only one we need to worry about." After we hung up, I called the police department and was connected to Detective Callahan. I laid out the situation, the impersonation, the photos, the money David had paid. "This is identity theft and fraud," Callahan said, "not just a family dispute. If he's doing this to one person, he's probably doing it to others. Document everything: names, screenshots, property records. We'll need it." I spent the rest of the day gathering every scrap of proof I could find, combing through social media and business networking sites. By evening, I'd already uncovered 2 profiles where Corbin listed himself as co-owner of my company. This wasn't just carelessness, it was calculated, and it wasn't going to stop unless I made it stop. David agreed to help set the stage. He texted Corbin, saying he was ready to move forward with the full investment and wanted to meet in person to finalize the paperwork. Corbin jumped at the offer, suggesting a coffee shop downtown. I arrived early and took a seat in the far corner, angled so I could see the door but stay out of sight. 10 minutes later, Corbin walked in wearing a crisp blazer and carrying a folder. He spotted David, shook his hand, and sat down like he owned the place. David asked him to explain the partnership again, playing the role of a cautious but eager investor. Corbin spoke smoothly about our properties, pointing to the folder as if it contained contracts worth millions. That was my cue. I stood and crossed the room. "Funny," I said, sliding into the seat beside David. "I don't remember agreeing to any partnership." Corbin's face went pale. "Cambria, I can explain." "Please do," I said, "and make it good." David's recording this. He stammered something about a misunderstanding, about trying to get funding for our next deal. I cut him off. "There is no our. You're using my name and my properties to scam people. You're going to give David his money back, take down every fake profile, and pray the police go easy on you." Corbin's jaw tightened. "You wouldn't call the cops on your own brother." I took out my phone. "Watch me." He started to protest, but I was already dialing. I told the dispatcher I had a fraud suspect with me, gave our location, and waited. When the officers arrived, I handed over David's recording, the screenshots, and property records. Corbin tried to talk his way out of it, but the evidence was stacked too high. They cuffed him at the table and walked him out past the espresso machine as the door closed behind them. I knew the fallout hadn't even begun. Corbin took a plea deal guilty to fraud and identity theft. He got 2 years probation and a restitution order to repay David and several other victims the police had uncovered, nearly $40,000 in total. It was the first time in his life he'd been held accountable for something bigger than a bounced check. Sloan was gone within a month. Her social media went dark on anything related to him, and friends told me she'd moved back to her parents' house in Florida. Corbin stayed in Chicago, working at a call center, renting a small studio in a part of town my parents used to call too far from the lake. Graham and Lorraine never acknowledged what he'd done to them. I hadn't protected innocent people from a scam. I'd destroyed the family by involving the police. They called it betrayal, conveniently skipping over the months they'd spent trying to take my property and rally relatives against me. I changed my number. Only Rachel and a handful of trusted contacts got the new one. The silence that followed felt unnatural at first, but the longer it lasted, the more I realized how much space it freed up in my head. Work filled the rest. The expanded workshop gave me room to take on more commissions, and business grew steadily. At home, I started another kind of project, turning the spare room into a nursery. Soft grays on the walls, shelves for storybooks, a rocking chair by the window. It was the kind of future I'd decided to protect at any cost. The door to my family stayed closed. Whatever was on the other side of it belonged to them, not me, and for the first time. I was fine with that. I was deep in Q3 reconciliation when my laptop pinged with an incoming video call. Wexler Home blinked across the screen like a warning light. I hesitated, then clicked accept. My mother's face filled the frame, practically glowing. "Leona, sweetheart, we have the most wonderful news," she trilled. That voice, that tone, it always meant I was about to lose something. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my pen against the desk. "What's going on?" Dad appeared beside her, grinning like a man who just won the lottery. "You know how Bryn's been stressing over the wedding? It's all fixed now." "Oh," I said carefully. Mom clasped her hands together. "We sold your lake house." The room tilted. "You what?" "Your lake house," she repeated like I hadn't heard her. "We got an amazing offer above asking, and it's perfect. We wired the deposit for the venue this morning. Isn't that incredible? I didn't move. I couldn't. That house wasn't just property. It was privacy. It was peace. It was mine." "You weren't even using it," Dad added. "It's been sitting empty for years." "I've been working, Dad. In Boston. Not on vacation." "Exactly," Mom chirped. "So why let a whole house go to waste? Bryn deserves a beautiful wedding, and this way she gets everything she's dreamed of. It's your gift to her." I felt something in my chest tighten and lock. "That's wonderful," I managed. Mom clapped. "I knew you'd understand. You've always been so generous." "Bryn's going to be thrilled," Dad added. "She already is," Mom said. "She picked out her dress yesterday. Wait until you see it. It's hand-stitched silk from Italy." They kept talking, smiling like we were planning a vacation and not dissecting my life. I watched their faces full of celebration, utterly oblivious. Anyway, Mom said, adjusting the camera, "We just wanted to share the good news, love you, sweetheart." "Love you," I replied with practiced calm and clicked to end the call. The silence that followed was louder than anything they'd said. I closed my laptop and reached for my phone. There was only one person I needed to call. I bought the lake house when I was 28. Alone. No cosigner. No congratulations from home. Just me, a real estate lawyer, and a banker who called me sir in the email chain. It sat on a quiet patch of Lake Champlain with a wide porch and a dock that jutted out like a stubborn jaw. I furnished it slowly second-hand books, a worn armchair, hand-woven blankets from a Vermont artisan who never remembered my name. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. The one space untouched by guilt, expectation, or performance. I didn't even tell my family until 6 months later, and when I did, my mother barely looked up from her crossword. "Must be nice," she'd said. That was the first month I started sending money home. It was subtle at first, $300 here, a credit card payment there. Bryn's tuition bill, the water heater, Dad's car lease. By the second year, it was automatic, scheduled, sanitized through shell accounts and online transfers. I never mentioned it. They never asked where it came from. It was easier that way, for them. At some point, I stopped counting. I stopped visiting the house, too. It hurt less to imagine it pristine and untouched than to return and find it filled with other people's needs. But one thing I hadn't forgotten, couldn't forget, was what I'd done 18 months after closing. I moved the deed under a holding company I set up during grad school, Wexmont Holdings. It was dormant until I gave it a purpose. No one else knew, not even Natalie. I didn't do it because I expected them to steal from me. I did it because deep down I knew they might. I pulled out my laptop and opened the encrypted drive. Everything was there, the original deed, the transfer paperwork, the tax filings. A quiet insurance policy hidden in plain sight. Then I called Natalie. Natalie picked up on the second ring. "Leona, wow." "It's been a minute. I need a favor," I said. "Something legal. Something big." She didn't miss a beat. "I'm listening. I think my parents just sold a house they didn't own." There was a pause. "Come again," I explained everything how they'd called that morning, beaming like they'd won the lottery, proudly announcing they'd sold my lake house to pay for Bryn's wedding. How they talked about it like I should be proud. "And here's the thing," I added, opening the PDF on my screen. "They didn't sell my house. They sold a property belonging to Wexmont Holdings. Your holding company," Natalie said, voice tightening. "The one we created together." "Exactly. I moved the deed years ago. I just checked it's still under Wexmont. They forged my signature on the sale documents." Jesus, Leona. They always knew where the key was, where the paperwork was. I gave them too much trust. You gave them everything, she corrected, and they used it to commit felony fraud. I exhaled slowly. That word makes it real. It is real, and if they cashed that check, it's also traceable. I minimized the deed files and sat back in my chair. "Do I have a case?" Natalie laughed bitterly. You don't just have a case, you have a nuclear bomb. Forgery, misrepresentation, theft of corporate assets. This isn't just a family squabble, Leona. It's criminal. I stared at the screen at my parents' smiling faces frozen in the call thumbnail. They thought they'd gotten away with something. They thought I'd nod, send a gift, maybe offer to cover the band. I've been sending them money for years, I said quietly. Mortgage, credit cards, Bryn's loans. I didn't want recognition. I just didn't want them to drown. Natalie's tone softened. And they turned around and dragged you under anyway. I should have cut them off. You tried. You bought yourself an island. They just paddled out after you. I didn't respond. I was already drafting the paperwork. My hand didn't shake. Not this time. Let me guess, Natalie said. You're not calling to vent. No, I said. I'm calling to fight. The template was already in Natalie's files. We modified it, swapped names, dates, property ID, then ran it through Wexmont's counsel for formal review. Within 48 hours, a foreclosure notice was prepped, notarized, and sent to my parents' front door via certified mail. No threats, no explanations. Just the facts: the sale was unauthorized, the buyer defrauded, and all proceeds frozen pending legal investigation. Wexmont Holdings was asserting its rights. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't even call. Instead, I opened our old family group chat, the one muted for over a year, and sent a single message. Check your mail. That was it. Then I closed the app, shut my laptop, and made tea. I waited in the stillness of my apartment, the only noise the clink of the spoon against porcelain. The silence was sharp, but not empty. They'd wanted me quiet, obedient, the background figure who kept the lights on. So I gave them what they asked for, a version of quiet they wouldn't know how to handle. By morning, 3 messages blinked across my screen. One from Mom: honey, did something happen? The mailman dropped off something confusing. One from Dad: we should talk, Leona. And one from Bryn: this is about your stupid house, isn't it? I didn't answer. I forwarded them all to Natalie. She replied 2 minutes later. They're rattled. Good. I put my phone face down on the table and looked out at the gray Boston skyline. I hadn't won yet, but something had shifted. For once, I wasn't the one waiting to be forgiven. I wasn't the one cleaning up someone else's mess. This time, they were going to feel what it was like to stand in a storm they couldn't see coming. The first email from Destiny landed at 6:42 a.m. Subject: urgent payment issues. Gilmore wedding. She was polite at first, almost apologetic. Hi, Leona. I'm following up regarding several bounced payments connected to the upcoming event. The venue has requested immediate confirmation, and the florist is asking for a new deposit. Can someone from your family give me a call? I didn't reply. By noon, there were 5 more. The tone shifted. Desperation bled through the sentences. The band is demanding cash up front. The Grand Vista says they're releasing your date if they don't hear back in 48 hours. Please advise ASAP. I screenshotted each message and forwarded them to Natalie. She responded with a single thumbs up. Meanwhile, Bryn was posting bridal selfies like nothing was wrong. Her Instagram was a wedding countdown in soft pastels, lace robes, manicured hands, champagne flutes balanced on pedicured toes. Final fitting before the big day, can't wait to marry my prince, blessed and glowing. The comments were full of heart emojis and goals. None of her followers knew the checks were bouncing or that the string quartet hadn't confirmed. The illusion held for now. But I could see the cracks forming. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine and read the latest from Destiny. This one was marked urgent, response required. Hi, Leona. I've now received warnings from 7 vendors about pending cancellations. I've tried contacting your parents but haven't heard back. I need to know what's going on. Please. My name is on some of these contracts. My reputation is at risk. Still, I said nothing. They built this fantasy on money they didn't own, on a house that wasn't theirs, and on the belief that I'd stay silent forever. But silence doesn't mean surrender. I poured another glass and opened the file Natalie had sent the official injunction paperwork prepped for filing in the morning. This was no longer a warning. It was the beginning of the collapse. By 9:15 a.m., Natalie had filed the injunction. The court clerk confirmed receipt. The judge assigned to our case had a reputation for efficiency, and within hours, a temporary restraining order was issued. The sale was frozen. All funds flagged for fraud investigation. Wexmont Holdings' legal standing was now official. My parents hadn't just sold a house they'd tried to launder stolen property through a closed loop of entitlement and assumption. I didn't need to announce it. The avalanche started on its own. By late afternoon, my phone began to buzz. The family group chat, silent for months, lit up like a flare. "Mom, honey, there's some issue with the bank. Can you check Dad, Leona? We're getting strange calls from the title company." "Bryn, what did you do?" I didn't reply. Then came the phone calls. 10 missed calls in under 30 minutes. I muted the thread and set my phone face down on the counter. Let them spiral. Let them guess. I opened my laptop to an email from the escrow officer CCing my attorney. "All disbursements have been placed on hold pending legal review." Another message followed minutes later from the buyer's real estate agent. "Please contact us immediately to clarify the ownership structure. Our client is extremely concerned." I took a long sip of coffee and refreshed Destiny's inbox. A new subject line had appeared. "Help. I'm losing control of the wedding." She had no idea just how much worse it was about to get. I didn't enjoy watching things fall apart, not in the way Bryn would have had it been reversed, but there was a quiet, brutal satisfaction in letting cause meet effect. They'd acted without asking, without checking, without once considering that I might not just lie down and take it. Now, the money was locked, the timeline was wrecked, and every call they made bounced off the same wall, my silence. I closed every tab, but one, the live status of the restraining order. Active it read. Natalie texted, "They're going to feel this by morning." I didn't answer. I just watched. The call came just after midnight. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. A part of me wanted to hear how far they'd fallen. "Leona." My mother's voice was hoarse, almost unrecognizable. "Sweetheart, please don't hang up." I didn't say anything. Dad's voice came next, brittle, but still trying for calm. "We just need to talk. There's been some confusion. Something with the bank." "You mean the fraud investigation," I said. "That confusion." A silence stretched. "Leona, we didn't know," Mom whispered. "We thought." "You thought what?" My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. That the house was just sitting there waiting for you to sell, that you were entitled to something you never earned. "We needed the money," she said, almost childlike. "Bryn's wedding. You've had money I cut in. $'m $800 a month for 4 years, paid your mortgage, covered your credit cards, car payments, half of Bryn's tuition." More silence. "I thought it was," from a relative, Dad murmured. "It was," I said, "the one you raised, the one you taught to be useful, not loved." Mom started crying. Loud, hiccuping sobs. "We didn't know it was you." "No, you didn't want to know. Because if you knew, you'd have to feel guilty about how easy it was to take." "We were just trying to keep things afloat," Dad said. "You're doing so well, and that's why you thought I wouldn't notice when you stole from me." "Don't say that," Mom cried. "We're family." "No," I said softly. "You didn't raise a daughter. You raised a safety net." There was no yelling on the other end. No excuses left. "I was your guardian angel," I said. "And you stole from her." I hung up. Not because I was angry, but because there was nothing else left to say. My phone lit up again seconds later. I powered it off and sat in the dark, the only sound in the room my own breath. They weren't calling to make it right. They were calling because they finally realized what it meant to lose me. The headline hit the local news 2 days before the hearing. "Bride's family accused of real estate fraud to fund a $120K wedding." I didn't leak it, but I didn't stop it either. Destiny the planner gave a statement to the press. Tearful, angry. Said she'd been misled, that she was left with thousands in vendor losses and a ruined reputation. The comments were brutal. The sympathy wasn't with Bryn. In court, the prosecutor laid out everything: the forged signatures, the illegal sale, the financial trail tracing back to Wexmont Holdings. They called me to the stand first. I spoke plainly. No tears, no vengeance. Just numbers, timelines, and receipts. My parents sat at the defense table, stiff and pale. Their lawyer didn't say much. There wasn't much to say. Then Bryn took the stand. She lasted 3 minutes before unraveling. "She's jealous," she shouted, pointing at me. "She's always been jealous." She couldn't stand that it was my turn to be happy. "Miss Wexler," the judge warned, "she doesn't want a family. She just wants to ruin everything security was already moving before the judge gave the order." They escorted her out as she kicked over her chair. The room was silent again. The judge turned to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Wexler, you didn't just violate the law. You violated trust. You didn't ask. You didn't warn. You forged your daughter's name and treated her property like a family ATM." Mom's lip trembled. Dad just stared at the floor. "When you forged her name," the judge said coldly, "you forfeited the right to call yourself her family." The gavel came down. Charges were filed. Sentencing would follow. Outside, cameras waited. I said nothing. Just kept walking past reporters, past flashbulbs, past the courthouse steps. I didn't feel triumphant, but I felt finished. The lake house looked exactly the same. Same chipped white shutters, same creaky porch step, same wind chimes my mother once bought on a roadside trip and forgot about the next day, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. I walked through each room slowly. The furniture was just as I'd left it intact, untouched. But something in the air had shifted. It smelled like memory not home. Every corner held a ghost of something that used to comfort me. Now it just reminded me how easily comfort can be turned against you. I paused by the bookshelf, fingers tracing the spine of a novel I'd reread during one long winter break. I used to dream in this house, plan futures, breathe freely. Then I thought about the call, the one where they told me it was gone, like it had never mattered. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked out over the lake, still as glass. It had been my sanctuary, my proof that I could build something without them. Now it was just a box full of someone else's assumptions. I stood, pulled the keyring from my pocket, and walked back to the kitchen. There was no dramatic gesture, no slam. I simply placed the keys on the counter, a quiet exit from a place that no longer needed me and that I no longer needed. I closed the door behind me and didn't look back. Back in Boston, I sat on the floor of my apartment and opened my contacts. One by one, I deleted them. Mom, Dad, Bryn, every cousin who sent guilt-laced messages about keeping the family together. It didn't sting. It felt like cleaning. Then I opened a new account at a small credit union no one in my past had access to. No joint permissions, no auto transfers, just mine. When the call came, I almost let it go to voicemail. But I answered. "This is Detective Rowe," the voice said. "I thought you'd want to know your case is leading to others. We've had 3 more adult children report financial abuse since your hearing. They saw your story." For a moment, I didn't speak. Then I said, "Good. Sometimes it takes one person being willing to burn the whole thing down." "I didn't burn it," I said. "They did. I just stopped shielding them from the smoke." He paused, then thanked me and hung up. I stared at the screen a little longer, then shut it off. That night, I packed a small bag. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. No one needed to know. The only destination that mattered was somewhere they couldn't follow. At sunrise, I boarded a train headed north. I didn't have an address, just an idea. The trees blurred past the window, and for the first time in years, I wasn't calculating anyone else's needs. I wasn't checking my balance to cover someone else's mistake. The phone in my lap didn't buzz once. No one knew where I was. No one expected anything. And for the first time in my life, that silence didn't feel like exile. It felt like freedom.